to the Wallace Business Forum Reimagination series on building trust in a digital economy. This is a series of 5 episodes, and today is episode 4, which is about the revolution of big data, artificial intelligence, and robotics for business across all industries. This forum is brought to you by the Wallace Business Forum in cooperation with John Clements Consultants, Inc. With the support of our partner organizations, the Filipino CEO Circle, or FCC, the Management Association of the Philippines, or MAP, and the Financial Executives of the Philippines, or FINEX. At the Wallace Business Forum, we tell it like it is. More than 38 years in assisting chief executives navigate the political and business landscape of the Philippines, presenting to you the Wallace Business Forum video of We Tell It Like It Is.
The Wallace Business Forum is a 30-year-old think tank that provides a valuable link between the country's top business leaders and the leaders of government. It helps CEOs to understand the environment within which they must operate through a series of publications and meetings that access the business, political, and economic environment and predict where we may go. WBF is considered one of the most authoritative, independent sources of information and assistance in understanding in the Philippines. We tell it like it is.
Presenting to you the chairman and founder of the Wallace Business Forum, Mr. Peter Wallace.
Thank you, Rosario. Welcome, everybody. I think we're going to have a very fascinating meeting this morning. Last year was the year of change. 2020 is when we went from the physical world to the virtual. The economists called it tech acceleration, technological acceleration. And my column tomorrow will cover a bit of that. But today we're going to delve into its impact on business, the different sectors of business, and how moving into this virtual world will affect all of us and what we can expect into the future. So it should be a fascinating event. I encourage you to ask questions as we get into that section. And I ask you to think about your own businesses and where they're going and where they should be going. Because it's no longer a time when we can do business the way we always did. We've had a radical change that is a permanent change. There'll be some lightening of it as we move into the next few years, but essentially we will no longer be doing the business the way we used to do in the past. The big central offices are a day of historic amusement and no longer will be what we have tomorrow. So I'll turn over to Carol Dominguez now, our partner, for introducing the speakers and the panel, and also to ask a few questions of you now, which I'd encourage you to answer immediately, and we'll give you the immediate response to them. It'll help guide our panelist and speaker a bit as they talk forward as well. So Carol, over to you.
Thanks, Peter. And I couldn't agree more with Peter. Good morning, everyone. Happy Chinese New Year and happy Valentine's Day. I'm very happy to be here with you today to moderate this forum on the revolution of big data, robotics, and AI. And I think, technology has never been more important, and I'm not a tech person, but this is the single most important thing that has enabled, I'm sure, most of us here to survive or even thrive during this crisis. You know, what would we do without tech? Right? Um, so we have some very, very interesting speakers today. We have an expert from Google, KPMG. We have the world's robotics ambassador and a robotic surgeon. I mean, such an interesting panel. But before we go there, let me begin by asking some poll questions. May I ask the audience to participate? So please bring up the poll questions. Our first question is, does your company have a clear and well-defined digital transformation strategy? Yes, no, but it is planned, doesn't need it yet, and won't be needed. Give me a few seconds. Okay, so let's see the results. As you can see, 48% said yes, 43% said no, but it's planned. So that means almost 90%, you know, have this in their plans or are doing it already. Only 7% thinks they don't need it yet, and 2% won't be needed. Wow, um, that's a bold statement. If you don't think you need, um, you know, this clear defined digital strategy in this day and age. Second question, please. Does your company have a dedicated digital technology and change management team responsible for overseeing the digital transformation of your business? Let's give it a minute. I encourage all of you to vote so we can get, you know, how people, just the environment, what people are thinking. Okay, let's see the results. Uh, so 56% said yes. Again, 37% no, but it is needed. So that's 80% again, the positive. Uh, 6% said they don't need it yet, and 2% said it won't be needed. So almost similar with the first question. Third question, please. Are you satisfied with the pace at which your company is adapting to digital trends and technologies? Okay, so we have 49% said yes, 48% said no. So it's half and half said no, and you have the 2% thinks it's not relevant to the company. So half are satisfied and another half are not satisfied. So which means there's an opportunity to move forward at a faster pace, especially with this situation that we're in. And finally, the fourth question, please. How do you see digital technology impacting your industry in the next 3 to 5 years? Great, let's see the results, please. So almost 96% there will be a positive impact. 4% said that there's going to be a negative impact. 2% said actually it's no impact, zero, and not relevant, zero. So majority said that there would be a positive impact. That's great news. Thank you very much for joining the polls. Now, Let's get to the heart of our business. I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker today, who is Ferdy Saputil, Google Cloud Lead for the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Ferdy has had 25 years experience in management consulting, leadership, sales, digital marketing in the corporate world, and he has also been an entrepreneur. He was a pioneer in the early days of internet, managing global teams and apps and mobile development and digital marketing, having worked at the SN group of companies who had the shared services for digital services, then with Microsoft leading the consulting, public sector, and enterprise business, and now with Google building the Google Cloud business across the region. I spoke to him earlier and asked him why he chose Google, and he said that when he was offered this position 3 years ago, it was already for this cloud business, and it's so timely that this business grew leaps and bounds, especially in the past year. Over to you, Ferdy.
Good morning, everyone. For most of us who's been attending online events in the midst of the pandemic, I'm sure one of the key insights that most of us are looking for is how to move forward and what the post-pandemic situation will be. But more importantly, how will our organization be differentiating itself, and how will the adoption of technology be that differentiation? I'm Ferdy Saputil, and I lead the Google Cloud business in the Philippines. And this is the conversations we normally have with our customers as they pivot their business. But aside from the transformation of the business, one thing that is mostly overlooked is the transformation of the market itself, especially now where we have been working from home for almost a year, and our kids are all doing distance learning, and aside from food and water, internet connection has become a necessity. There is so much at stake during these times. And for others, it's not just to transform the business, but survival as well. And the path forward is sometimes not very clear. We have heard so many insights, and most of you have probably attended a lot of webinars. But what might work for one may not work for another. Just some quick insights on what the transformation of the digital market is during the pandemic. For Southeast Asia alone, there are 40 million additional internet users. It took us 5 years to add 100 million, but it's already 40% in just 1 year. And 1 out of 3 of our internet users have tried new digital service just during this whole pandemic alone. And the Philippines is only second to Vietnam. But for me, the more interesting insight is that for the Philippine market, majority of our users are actually coming from non-metro areas, which means that the digital market that we know now is not limited in the cities, but have actually flourished in the provinces as well. And we have all seen the memes of how COVID-19 became the digital transformation lead for most organizations, but not just for the business, but for the market as well. If you're like me with 3 kids doing distance learning from home, you can just imagine that now all child, teenager, college student are experienced distance learners. I have seen my son and daughters with 2 devices in front of them while attending a class, chatting with friends, and doing paper notes, the best of the past and the present. Google and Apple have actually released contact tracing tools for mobile devices as we try to go back to normal. It is available for health agencies, it's open source, non-threatening, and government managed. This only shows that even for organizations like us, we had to pivot our services to find new ways of partnerships to protect the vulnerable members of our society, and also trying to understand how we can actually move forward faster. This profound and staggering transformation is not a new emergence. However, but the last stages of a centuries-long process to enhance our communication tools. And the process doesn't unfold in a linear way, but in waves. And these waves are triggered by paradigm shifts. For me, the three most important ones to consider in recent history is printing, computing, and today, cloud-based technologies. But sadly, not all organizations are able to survive these waves of transformation. Just look at encyclopedias um, during the era of Encarta with CD. And just as I mentioned in the beginning, now with Wikipedia, and just as I mentioned in the beginning, we're also in this cusp of transformation. The question really right now with this full transformation that's happening around us is, will our organization survive? I ask that question because there are actually organizations who actually survived this century's waves of transformation. One good case study is Nintendo. During the printing era, they actually manufactured game cards called Hanafuda cards, what we now know as Pokemon cards. And when LCD screens were invented, they actually moved to Game and Watch, and then to consoles. And then when in the advent of cloud and mobile services with Pokemon Go, and now they have one of the most popular gaming device, Nintendo Switch. So as you can see, they have managed to ride that wave of transformation, and it's still very much relevant today. And why is it that others fail and others survive? This is because of the danger of how and the power of why. As you all know, transformation is a mindset, and most organizations are actually stuck in the how we do our business, how we manufacture our products, how we sell them, how we organize our distribution lines, and more. And there is a lot of pride and tradition on the how. Because of the years of efficiency and structure we have actually brought in making sure that we have the best how in the business. The power of why is different. And for Nintendo, their why has not changed over the centuries. And that is, we want people to play. Regardless of platform, technology, or process, they have actually built, or that they have actually built over the years, their core remains constant, and that is to make people play. For Google, our why is to organize the world's information to make it universally accessible and useful. And that has not changed for the past 22 years. However, our how is a different story. Our products have evolved over the years, and without other people noticing it. We have integrated machine learning and AI in all of our products over the years, from search ranking to doing search via voice recognition, to YouTube's recommendation engine, maps and ways and with navigation recommendation, Google Translate, Google Photo, Google Lens, and more, which are all ML and AI powered. You cannot organize the world's information if you're not a data company. And you cannot make it meaningful and useful to others if you're not a machine learning and AI company. But all needs to start with data. And this is a universal journey for all organizations. And everybody are actually in different maturity models. One starts by becoming an organization that uses data for its decision making. Then you evolve into becoming an organization that consolidates the data, regardless if it's your first party data, a second party, or a third party data. Then you start looking for insights from all of this data. And then you train the data to start predicting outcomes. And ultimately, you start democratizing the data and insights to all of your stakeholders for faster and quicker decision making. But data mastery is not a siloed journey. And I go back because it has to be aligned to your why. It has to be aligned to your business outcome. and not just for technology's sake. It has to be part of your organizational transformation. And based on our experience, this is what we are seeing as the three dimensions of success. Let's start with culture. Culture is about automating repetitive and ungrateful tasks while enhancing collaboration on ideation. With a constant feed with users who are now constantly connected and online too. For Google, our productivity platform is Google Workspace, and that's been our driver of our collaboration and ideation, especially now where most of us are working from home and our interaction has been pretty much limited to digital. This is a Forrester report showing that remote work experience matters. A great work from home experience drives employee engagement and in return drives great customer experience that ultimately drives revenue. Now the question is, how is this related to data mastery? You will be surprised on the amount of data generated by our employees. But more than that, a culture of collaboration and openness is key to data mastery. You need people to be open to change based on what the data is saying and not just gut feel. Now, business is about having clarity on what's happening with internal systems for ERP, customer management, or sales, and external sources such as IoT sensors, weather data, or even digital marketing. And all of this is being consolidated to make informed decisions supported by technology intelligence. It's also about defining what are the desired business outcomes, and everything should be anchored in that as well. Now, technology is about an intelligence that works for business and empowers people with analytics and recommendation. It allows you to transform in confidence, to leverage the power of cloud, reinvent the way you do your business, and leapfrog from competition. Google is a cloud native company. We have been using cloud since day one, probably before it was called cloud services. You cannot organize the world's information if you're not a cloud company. To deliver the intuitiveness of our consumer products and reliability to our enterprise customers, we need to make sure that we invent new ways of doing data, machine learning, and AI. And also performance at a global scale with our global network and software-defined data centers that delivers compute or data query at scale. Now, let's look into an organization that was able to achieve data mastery. Magazine Luiza, or Magalu, is actually called the Amazon online store of Brazil. But that wasn't always the case when they started. It was pretty much a standard brick and mortar business doing what other retailers were doing back in 2015. But in 2016, the CEO had a change of vision from launching an online marketplace to speeding up deliveries with a Grab-like service. The company has aggressively harnessed technology to better serve its customers. And customers have responded, helping the company's fortune to skyrocket between January 2015 and summer of 2019. Magalu's stock price increased more than 18,000% in value, eye-popping in any context and truly remarkable, given that Brazil was suffering its worst recession in history when Magalu's rally started. Magalu's CEO vision has never been about a single mobile application or data initiatives or a large data warehouse or a data lake or machine learning AI projects. But rather, the vision was to transform all processes in the organization, from application development to logistics to operations to marketing and sales. Her vision was to get data insights both from the demand side and also from the supply side, and for the organization to transform based on those insights and to ultimately deliver the best products and services to its organizations. And they have made a decision early on that cloud services will be the driver of this transformation. from being able to do more and get more data quickly without the need of years of enterprise data warehouse, so that people can focus on insight rather than development, and using cloud-based productivity and collaboration tools to make sure that insights get to the decision makers quickly with feedback from people on the ground. Using technology to better understand who their customers are, to be able to predict what they need, and eventually personalize the service, and adopt open technology that allows the organization to use other solutions and platforms that are best suited to their industry. And as an outcome, their direction has driven a lot of resilience. And if you compare it with other retail institutions, such as Macy's, who are far more bigger and has longer experience in the industry, what you will see is the exact opposite in terms of growth and investor confidence. And just to make it more tangible, this is what a typical journey for a retail company would be. You look for quick wins to drive confidence and learnings, as you need the whole organization to be on board to see what the new digital process would be, back to your new how. Then you look into your disruptive services. A good example would be how best to deliver customer delight by knowing your customers better. Then you look into development as you now look into expanding your services and offerings, and then transformation as you create new users, and new user experiences, usually with more machine learning or AI. And as mentioned, our dimensions of success are still anchored on business outcomes. From my retail journey example a while ago, these are just some of the business outcomes that you can come out of. From customers adopting more of your services from a mobile platform as part of their lifestyle, to a superstore where a post-pandemic scenario would be more touchless, to super services where your offering is now beyond retail as we now try to deliver more convenience to our customers, or looking into data monetization with your retail partners for performance marketing. For me, a good scenario would be the exponential partnership where you work with leading partners in driving differentiated services. A classic example of this is our partnership with Deutsche Bank, a 150-year-old company whom we have working on a long-term partnership with a common goal of transforming banking and to deliver new differentiated services for those customers. And a big portion of this partnership is related to data. This is all in the context of co-creation and co-innovation. So what's on the horizon? Our CEO, Sundar Pichai, already called out that our work in ML and AI will be the driving force of our transformation, from self-driving cars to better product searches that go straight to transaction once you actually have found your product, to using your phone camera to know where you are rather than just a flat pin location of all of your services. And we will continue to evolve using our Google Cloud services for our machine learning and AI initiatives. What does it mean for our customers? What we do in Google Cloud is actually offer all of our services to enterprise customers so that they have access to the tools that makes Google Google. Which brings me to my last slide. Transformation is all about your ability to focus on the why and evolve on the how. It relies on driving a new culture of innovative business models and confidence in cloud technology as a platform. And for this, you should anchor it on clear business outcomes and work with cloud partners that deliver sustainable partnerships beyond the technology. And with that, thank you for the opportunity this morning, and may you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ferdy. That was a very, very um, good presentation. A lot to discuss after our panelists. In fact, uh, you gave so many different examples. Um, so that definitely inspired someone like me. Um, so our next part of the program would be to invite our panelists to give their point of view. They will be given 10 minutes each. But before that, I'd like to encourage all of you to please post your questions in the Q&A box or on the chat, and just choose, everyone, so that everyone can see your question, so we can get through the Q&A quickly. Um, so our first panelist is Mylene Abiva, who is the president and CEO of Felta Multimedia, which is a 55-year-old company engaged in introducing innovative instructional materials and educational devices for school technology. So as I mentioned earlier, Mylene is the world's robot Olympiad ambassador, and I probably like her to explain more what that is, but she told me that she represents 70 countries. She is the brand ambassador of robotics. Aside from that, she is one of the 100 most influential Filipino women in the world. She's a mother, a model entrepreneur, a mountain climber, and a master in multitasking. How do you do it all, Mylene, and manage to look very lovely? Over to you, Mylene.
Hello, thank you so much, Carol, for the kind introduction. I'll be speaking to you this morning about education and its impact. The European Commission conducted a study for 15-year-olds on the evolution of students' interest in science and technology. And there is a significant decrease in developing countries such as United States, Korea, Netherlands, and Norway. Now, they also conducted a ROSE project, as we call it, and they asked this question to 15-year-olds. I would like to become a scientist. This was asked in several countries. And in the Philippines, you will see that 50% girls would like to be a scientist and 60% boys would like to be a scientist. However, in poor or developing countries, they do not get the opportunity or the possibility. But in developed countries, there are less and less girls and boys who would like to become a scientist, particularly the girls. Another question was posed. I would like to get a job in technology. And the same results happen. There are 78% girls who would like to be in technology and 80% boys. And the same pattern in poorer or developing countries, they want to be in technology but do not get the opportunity. And even in the developed countries, the boys and girls are even ambivalent. Now, in developed countries or aging countries such as Japan, this poses a threat because of their aging population. So in countries like Japan, less and less boys and girls would like to be in technology. Now, what are the implications? The implications is that science and technology play key roles in modern society as it becomes more knowledge-based and competitive. So if fewer young people pursue careers within science and technology, and the negative development is not turned around, companies like yourselves will find it increasingly difficult to attract and maintain the right workforce in the future. In robotics, the core subject skills that you will learn are the following: learning and innovation skills, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Also life and career skills, as well as information, media, and technology skills, all needed for the 21st century. Now, what are recommendations is that the European Commission recommend that the research should be a reversal of school science teaching pedagogy from mainly deductive to inquiry-based science education. The prime importance of values, attitudes, and meaning and context for interest in science and technology is needed. So it is beneficial in promoting science and technology. In addition, teaching has to be motivating, meaningful, and engaging. And lastly, we need to humanize schools. No more memorizing of formulas. I'm sure all, if not most of us, have had that in our high school days, right? Now, in the Philippines, Felta Multimedia Incorporated started the robotics technology education more than 21 years ago. And we conducted teachers training, and we have evolved to virtual robotics. In fact, we were featured, the Philippines was featured in the World Robot Olympiad Annual Report 2020 for being the first country to roll out virtual robotics in schools here in the Philippines. We have also signed a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Education for a robotics training program for all schools in the Philippines from the first grade up to the 12th grade. And I'm pleased to announce, as mentioned by Carol in her introduction, that I am the first and only World Robot Olympiad, a Filipina and a woman as well. And I represent 72 countries. I am the spokesperson so that countries will engage more on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And finally, I'd like to share with you the career paths for robotics, or STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The workforce can be the data scientists, we'll be needing data scientists, data analysts, software developers, cloud managers, AI manager, social media content manager, game developer, implementation analysts, QA testers in multiple platforms. You can have aeronautics engineers and virtual assistants and many, many more. So these are jobs that you may not have thought of maybe 5, even 3 or 2 years ago. So I'd like to end my short talk with sharing with you a short video about the future of jobs. Thank you.
COVID-19 is one of the biggest crises of our time. It has impacted every single one of us, shaken our social systems, and disrupted every sector of our economies. The automation of work, combined with a global recession, led workers to lose their jobs at an accelerated pace compared to previous years. And this trend is expected to continue. The ongoing shift in the division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms might displace 85 million jobs worldwide in the next 5 years, while 97 million new roles, ones that are more adapted to this new task distribution, may emerge. By 2025, companies expect to displace roughly 6% of their total workforce. 1 in 2 workers will need reskilling, and those remaining in their current roles will need to update 40% of their skill set to adapt to the changing labor market. There is a way to collectively benefit from these challenging times. Decades of research have shown that the most valuable asset of any economy or company is its human capital. Around the globe, companies are already experiencing a shortage in relevant skills for future roles and are investing in reskilling and upskilling their workforce. By 2025, organizations say they will train over 70% of their employees to ensure they can smoothly transition into the jobs of tomorrow. These include DevOps engineers, artificial intelligence specialists, digital marketing managers, talent acquisition specialists, and customer success specialists. It will take on average between 2 weeks and 5 months for workers to pick up new skills, allowing them to move into these new roles. But data shows they won't need to have the perfect skill set to start transitioning. While 2/3 of employers expect to get a return on investment in employees' reskilling programs within just 1 year, governments will also need to step in to update and fund education and training systems, and to ensure displaced workers have adequate safety nets. With purposeful leadership and collaboration, we can turn this global crisis into a unique opportunity to transition into a future of jobs that is inclusive, fair, and sustainable.
Thank you very much, and good day to all. Back to you, Carol.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mylene. Very, very good presentation. In fact, it just made me think. You talked about kids in the developing countries who want to study STEM and technology, but they have no opportunity. Then you have the kids from the developed countries who are not interested in STEM. So how do you bridge the gap? So before I introduce you to our second panelist, I would like to encourage all of you to please post your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box. Our second panelist is a very good friend of mine, Noel Bonon, who is the Vice Chairman and COO and also Head of Advisory of KPMG. Prior to joining KPMG in 2007, Noel was under a Secretary of Finance and overlooking the BIR and customs. A very good person to know that. He is a Juris Doctor from Ateneo and Masters of Law in International Economics Law from the University of Warwick, and he graduated from Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program. Noel claims that his passion interest is how all things digital can power an organization's growth. But I think his great passion is driving that Miata on the weekends, friends. Over to you, Noel.
Thank you, Carol. Let me just get my slide here up. Let me just share this, share my screen. Tell me if you see anything.
Not
Tell
yet.
me if you see, let me just share my screen. Okay.
Okay, we can see your screen.
Let me get it on slideshow. There, great. So thank you very much, Carol. So co-managing a firm such as KPMG Philippines has allowed me to indulge my ever-curious mind, my insatiable drive to see how myself, my partners, and our people can be better today than we were yesterday. A few years ago, I discovered the magic, if you will, of intelligent automation and harnessed it to improve our firm's processes and systems. This has made us more efficient as a firm and has enabled us to quickly respond to unforeseen challenges thrown to us by the COVID pandemic. In this presentation, I want to describe our firm's artificial intelligence journey. Admittedly, it's only the beginning, but we've reaped so much and have already helped our clients begin their own journeys. One caveat, as Carol stated, I'm a lawyer by profession and a manager by experience. I am not an AI engineer, but I am the beneficiary of AI. And I guess that's what makes me the right person to be an AI advocate. I'm a user and a very passionate one at that. So this slide presents a broad sweep of technology over the past 150 years. And how did we get here? It took approximately 100 years for mechanical systems to fully develop, 35 years for semiconductors to develop from the introduction of the first mainframe computer, and 15 years for the internet to gain widespread use from the time it was first used. So in a short span of time within the history of mankind, we find ourselves at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, ushered in by cloud computing and the Internet of Things. This is an era that will be defined and driven by extreme automation and ubiquitous connectivity. It is now evolving at a pace so fast to disrupt the long-held place of humans at the center of the world as we know it. In short, artificial intelligence or AI and cognitive systems will replace human labor, and judgment in many areas of life. It's a scary thought, but one that is fraught with so many exciting possibilities. Before I start talking about AI and immediate applications such as robotic process automation, I just want to put us on the same page and describe some terms. The first is artificial intelligence, and this is the ability of a machine to imitate intelligent human behaviors such as visual perception, speech recognition, and decision-making capabilities. The term AI is actually a general designation, and it covers everything, from simple automation to more complex decision making by machines. The next is machine learning, and this is a type of AI that enables systems to learn and improve automatically from data and from continuous experience without being explicitly programmed. Machine learning focuses on developing computer programs that can access data and use it to learn for themselves. Finally, robotic process automation, or what we call RPA. And this is the configuration of computer software, or what are known as bots, to execute mundane, repetitive manual tasks across applications and systems. This is a simple type of AI that finds so many applications in business transactions. And here I would like to describe in more detail why AI is important, why RPA is important for your organization. So, how have companies been responding to artificial intelligence? In 2019 and 2020, before the global pandemic, KPMG concluded a global survey of how automation is perceived by business leaders. Some of the findings are that 5 years ago, automation was hardly considered as part of any service delivery model. Today, it outpaces managed services, centralized outsourcing, supplier diversification, and regionalized delivery. Another one is that significant intelligent automation technology investments are already happening, where more than 30% of enterprises are investing with an average spend of 50 million US dollars. The majority of it is in finance and accounting, which is an interesting point I'll discuss later. So, based on KPMG and HFS research, a third of respondents are piloting solutions across the spectrum of AI technologies. A little over a quarter, or 35%, are moving into production, but only 17% on average have scaled and industrialized intelligent automation technologies. And only 11% are already investing in AI and RPA. So, what does this tell you? Fragmented efforts to scale AI technologies result in little or no return on investment, which means falling behind the competition. The lesson of the story is that AI tech has to be part of a holistic implementation strategy. In my experience, this is born out of a desire to improve enterprise efficiency. Now, if a leader wants to truly adopt AI technology effectively, he or she must understand the following. The first is that the organization must develop new capabilities, and this constitutes having the right structure, the right leadership oversight, and the right talent in place. At KPMG Philippines, we started this by the leadership taking the conscious decision maybe a decade back to formulate a digital roadmap and embrace this digital roadmap, which involved all of the firm's divisions and which cuts across all levels from partners to staff. The next thing a leader has to know is that AI could shift the competitive landscape. A key question here is who will move up the AI activation learning curve the fastest? How long will it take and at what level of investment? Making AI as part of the overall strategic business planning and linking its implementation to other key technology investments should be the top consideration for management teams. Next is that there is a rapid shift from experimental to applied technology. The AI landscape has rapidly evolved in the last few years, and the technology is ready to deliver true value. AI is no longer a technology to watch, but is already a technology to deploy. Next, the rise of AI as a service. The idea that artificial intelligence is a simple plug and play strategy is a common misconception. Companies need to build extensive internal capabilities to start taking advantage of AI as a service. AI and RPA must be implemented as part of a process improvement program. Therefore, the process must first be planned with AI and RPA as a solution. In our experience, you can't just implement AI and RPA and expect it to work. The next thing that a leader should know is that enterprise demand is growing. Many large enterprises are investing heavily and will continue to increase significantly in the next 3 years. Um, and there's a broad application of AI. There's finance and equipment, customer and market insights, as Ferdy did point out, and back offices and shared service automation to remove repetitive tasks. AI is not a future promise. It's happening right now as we speak. You have experienced AI and you probably weren't aware of it. Siri in your iPhone, Alexa, Netflix, all of these are powered by AI, and AI will be embedded in more businesses as it is embedded in mine. The relationship between RPA and AI shows how these two technologies work together. It starts with the simplest automatic automation called robotic process automation, where it imitates a human behavior that performs repetitive tasks. As the requirement evolves where the robot needs to meet tasks that are no longer repetitive, comes in the application of machine learning. Um, and then advancing to the most advanced stage, which is the cognitive automation, the machine will interpret vast amounts of data from multiple structured and unstructured sources, including text, voice, imaging, video, evaluate evidence, and use specific algorithms to simulate reasoning. And on my own company's journey, we've started taking the next step to incorporate optical character recognition in our robotic process automations. So I want to show you this slide. It's a bit busy, but this is essentially a slide of processes that occur in our accounting and finance, our accounting and finance division. This is just a sampling of a number of processes, not all processes, but I'd like to point out that within the first 2 months of applying RPA to our finance and accounting processes, we were able to save 6 man-months of work. I'll give you one example. Every Monday morning, I need a cash balances report where we take all the cash balances from our different bank accounts. Prior to RPA, it took two people around 14 hours working over the weekend, because I needed the report on Monday, to come up with that cash balance report. After AI, 14 hours has been reduced to 4 minutes. You can just imagine the time savings in overtime that I've saved from cutting down a process from 14 hours to 4 minutes. I was very happy with the result when we started testing ourselves on our AI capability in finance and accounting. And I mandated our tax division, which services our clients, to start implementing AI in their processes. One of the services that they do is filling up tax returns for expats, for individual clients, for companies. And you can imagine that we were filling up thousands of tax returns. Each tax return would take, just organizing the data, would take around 4 hours per tax return. Now, we've cut that 4 hours down to 2 minutes to organize the data. So think about the time savings. What are the implications for this? Number one, reduction of personnel. In our case, we didn't even let people go. We just reassigned them to place to other parts of the organization where we thought their intellectual capabilities were more critical. We started introducing several years ago AI to our clients, and I'll just pull up one use case. We implemented RPA on 10 of our clients' finance processes. Some of these processes were settlement, expense allocation, finance consolidation, inventory costing generation of reports. The total estimated time of manual execution for the 10 processes is 38.5 hours, equivalent to nearly 5 business working days for an 8-hour working hour per day. After implementing 26 software bots, all of this was reduced to just 5.4 hours, which is less than 1 business day. So immediately, RPA or robotic process automation brings about tangible, critical results. So, very broadly, what are the critical success factors to prepare for artificial intelligence and RPA within the organization? The first is to redesign core processes and rethink the operating model focused on the advances of these automation technologies. Next is to build a culture of automation by uniting the IT and business teams, something which we did. Each team that we work on has an accountant and a software engineer. Next, build a culture of automation through a top-down approach. It would not have successfully happened within our organization had not leadership mandated that it happen and shepherded to a successful result. The next is to blend and integrate technologies under the AI umbrella, such as RPA, machine learning, and shy away from piecemeal tactics or approaches. Next is to govern the data to build the business case. Uh, and next, to commit to change management programs to manage the transition. And lastly, is to hire for AI skills that support building and managing AI technologies. Included in this is contracting the most appropriate service provider to help you get into AI at the ground level. So, in closing, I would like to highlight just some things I would like to highlight. Companies can and should leverage artificial intelligence and robotic process automation in many operational areas from finance and accounting to HR to frontline services. These could possibly put you ahead of the competitiveness and profitability curve among your competitors. Doing so, the next thing is that doing so requires a good think about where these technologies can sit in your organization. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say finally that we have the expertise and experience to help you begin your AI journey. My team and I would be absolutely happy to entertain your inquiries about robotic process automation. With that, thank you very much and have a good rest of the conference. Carol, back to you.
Thanks, Noel. Is there a poll for Noel after this, Rosario?
There is a poll. So
Go
if
ahead.
we could request Lawrence to please present the poll. Okay, we request everyone to please answer the poll. Number one question: has your organization implemented artificial intelligence AI solutions in any of its operations? Next question is, if your answer is no, would your organization be interested to implement the artificial intelligence? Yes or no? We give you a few seconds to please answer the two questions, and we will send and present to you the results. Lawrence, can we show the results, please? The result shows that in the question is, has your organization implemented artificial intelligence, AI solutions in any of its operations? 32% said yes, they have implemented AI solutions, while 68% said no, they have not implemented the artificial intelligence solutions. And the next question is, if answer is no, would your organization be interested to implement artificial intelligence? 84% says yes, and 16% said no. Thank you very much for answering the question. Back to you, Carol.
Thanks, Rosario. Thanks, Noel. So lots of opportunities for you, Noel. Thanks for the very, very good presentation. Now, our last but not the least speaker is Dr. Jennifer Jose, MD, who earned the amazing distinction of being the first Filipino doctor to make it to the Surgeons Locator list of Intuitive Surgical Inc., the maker of Da Vinci Surgical System, where she maintains her status up to the present. Being on the list bestows Dr. Jose the honor of being one of the robotic surgeons all over the world recognized by this organization for their proficiency in robotic surgery. Among the ASEAN countries, Dr. Jose is the only one recognized who does robotics sacrocolpopexy, and I will ask her to define what this is. And she has administered the most number of robotic sacrocolpopexy in Asia. Over to you, Dr. Jose.
Okay. Okay. So the Da Vinci surgical system is installed in 5,400 countries worldwide since September 30 of 2019. Look at the worldwide procedure trend. From 2014 to 2019, you can see that there is an 18% growth in 2019. So we're doing a lot of robotic surgeries in 2019. And it was predicted that there is a 13 to 16% growth in 2020. However, we had the pandemic. Okay. Now, for the different kinds of surgical procedures, what you see in this slide here is that majority of cases are done by gynecologists and urologists, and the general surgeons are doing a lot of cases now in the past 10 years as well. These are the robotic cases in the Philippines, and you can see that the numbers are actually increasing. I work at Makati at St. Luke's Medical Center and look at the robotic cases in St. Luke's Medical Center. Majority are actually being done by urologists and gynecologists. Okay, next slide. Okay, and majority of the cases that we do are actually benign hysterectomies. Okay. These are the different indications that we do. We deal with benign issues of abnormal uterine bleeding, fibroids, endometriosis, pelvic organ prolapse, and also malignancies such as cervical and uterine cancers. These are the different procedures that we do. I have mentioned hysterectomies, myomectomies, endometriosis resection, sacrocolpopexy, and ovarian cystectomy. The Da Vinci system is a state-of-the-art surgical platform with 3D high-definition vision with a miniaturized wristed surgical instruments designed to help doctors take surgery beyond the limits of the human hand. This helped doctors to overcome the challenges of traditional open and laparoscopic surgery, and therefore, Da Vinci is changing the experience of surgery for women all over the world. This is our setup at St. Luke's Global City. You can see here that after docking the robot to the patient, the surgeon moves to the console table and does the surgery. Okay. Look at the advantages of the Da Vinci robot. This is actually magnified 12 times, stereoscopic with 3D vision, and the robotic wrist with 7 degrees of freedom. And movements are scaled, filtered, and translated. What do you mean by this? It's like doing an open surgery in a minimally invasive manner. And if you have like tremors, it doesn't transmit to the surgery itself. And let's say, for instance, the surgeon has Parkinson's disease and her hands are shaking. It does not transmit to the patient. So the procedure is actually very precise and accurate. The Da Vinci system enables your doctor to perform a minimally invasive gynecologic procedure, even for complex conditions, with enhanced vision, it's three-dimensional, precision, dexterity. As a surgeon, you're using both your right and left hands, and you are controlling everything from the camera, from the instruments. You have handworks, and you also have footworks. Okay. Look at the incision sites. If you compare the Da Vinci hysterectomy compared to open hysterectomy, look at open hysterectomy, you have a big incision. For the Da Vinci hysterectomy, you can see you have small incisions, about 5 to 8 millimeter each. Actually, even after the procedure, the patient can still wear two-piece, okay? Look at the other benefits. There is less blood loss and transfusions. We can actually offer these procedures to patients who cannot have like blood transfusion, like those from Jehovah's Witness. And there are few complications. Why? Because once you do the surgery, you are like beside the blood vessels and nerves. So you see everything. And then your instruments are like your wrist. So you can move it very freely. Okay. More advantages are, look at this, we have shorter hospital stay. I had a patient a week ago. After 12 hours of surgery, she wanted to go home right away. Actually, she did the Zoom meeting right away. She's actually a lawyer. We have better outcomes and patient satisfaction. The patient claims that they're not having pains after surgery. Some of them don't even take pain relievers. I highlighted quicker recovery and return to normal activities because what happens is that usually after surgery, you have to recover after 4 to 6 weeks. But with this kind of surgery, after 24 hours, you're actually going home and you can do things already. You can go back to your normal activities. Okay. It's not only the patients who benefits from this, but also the surgeons. Why? Because we can do difficult cases like adhesive disease, those with large myomas, fibroids, and we can also operate on obese patients. Remember, it's very difficult to operate on obese patients. Why? Because you need to make a very big incision, not only big, but it also has to be very deep. And the recovery is actually longer. Okay. Look at the other surgeon's benefits. We have greater access, precision, and control for improved dissections. We have quicker, easier suturing during vaginal closure and also uterine closure when we do repair of fibroids. And then at the same time, we have the control of the camera and all of the three operative arms for ultimate in surgical autonomy and efficiency. So we're actually very efficient as a surgeon. Okay. Aside from this, because we have small incision, there is significantly less pain, minimal scarring, and also low risk of wound infection. Look at the three core factors. We have high resolution 3D vision, endo wrist instrumentation, and also intuitive motion. So if you feel like you want to operate on the right side of the patient, you just need to go to the right side. You don't have to do counterintuitive movements, okay? So when you do this kind of surgery, it's like doing open surgery. The way you move your hands with the machine, it's the same thing that transmit inside the body of the patient. Majority of the cases that we do for robotic gynecology is robotic assisted laparoscopic hysterectomy. We also do a lot of myomectomy, and I think what is important here is not only to enucleate, but to repair the tissues so that it becomes strong again to carry pregnancy. With regards to pelvic reconstructive surgery, I'd like to mention here to you sacrocolpopexy because we are the first in Southeast Asia to perform robotic sacrocolpopexy. Actually, I am brought by the company to Vietnam, Malaysia, and other Asian countries to teach surgeons perform this procedure. So this sacrocolpopexy happens when the uterus is out because of prolapse and you have to anchor the vagina to the sacrum using the mesh. This is actually a very difficult procedure. Look at the value of robotics, its outcomes. Look at the appropriate use of robotics. This is actually very good for high risk populations. It's very good to apply to patients in the reproductive age group, in the perimenopause, and the menopausal age group. It benefits the elderly because you can operate the elderly patients even if it's a big kind of surgery, okay? Look at the length of stay. When you do robotic surgery, you're going to go home right away, as I've mentioned to you, and the complications are actually less. And look at the disease-free survival. When you do robotic surgery and open surgery, the disease-free survival is actually the same, okay? And I have mentioned to you already the benefit for obese patients. Aside from this is also very good for cancer patients. Look at this slide. For endometrial cancer, the median blood loss, the hospital stay is actually reduced. Even the complication rate is also reduced. And because of this kind of robotic surgery, BMI, age, and previous surgeries are not determinants now for patient selection for minimally invasive surgical procedures. We also do early stages of cervical cancer cases, and we get very good results. But of course, for cancer patients, it's a gyne-oncologist who does the procedures. Thank you. Back to Carol, please.
Dr. Hesse, thank you very much. Now, does anyone want to want to be, you know, undergo a robotic surgery today? I think my question would be around like, how are you educating, you know, doctors now with all this technology? But anyway, okay, so now we're open for Q&A. Again, please post your questions on the chat box, as well as on the, you know, Q&A box. So I would like to ask first question to Ferdy, our first speaker. Can we put all the videos of turn on the videos of all our panelists? So Ferdy, I mean, this has been a very, very interesting talk. We traveled from, you know, Google Cloud to, you know, ambassador of robotics, STEM to AI, and now robotic surgery. It's a very, very diverse, but yet well connected discussion. But my question for Ferdy is around um, his talk on you know, looking at the how versus the why. And you saw earlier the results of the poll where 46% still don't have a digital transformation strategy. So that's a huge opportunity. Um, but you talked a lot about the things somebody has to do, understanding the why and the how, and um, you know, building a culture, a digital culture, and getting the leaders involved. Where would the 46% who answered the poll that they haven't done, they don't have a digital transformation strategy, but they're considering, where would they start? How would they identify the why and not make the mistake of focusing on the how? What would be your advice to the 46%? That's a huge opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Carol. So actually, the just to put some context there, the why actually you can change the why. I mean, just to make sure that it's not fixed. I mean, I when I was with Microsoft in my early days with Microsoft, I remember the Microsoft why of Bill Gates were a PC in every home and in every office, and that is not relevant years after when I joined, because not everybody uses a PC. Everybody has a mobile device and a laptop, etc. So during that time, Microsoft actually changed their why to empower every person on the planet. So as you can see, it's not a fix. I just want to put the context that your why can change, and especially, and I think this is what I'm seeing, is that majority of some organizations are reevaluating their why given this whole current pandemic. Now, having said that, they evaluate what project can you actually start on. It has to, as I always say, that it has to be aligned with the business outcome. So, for example, like your business outcome is to, if you're a retail company, your business outcome is to make sure that you are continually delivering customer delight. Then you move back from there. I mean, when you talk about customer delight, there are three things. Do I know enough of the customer, enough for me to be able to, I would say, personalize the service so that I can eventually predict the transaction that they will next make? That is your business direction. Now, the how portion is number one, how do I know the customer more? Then that becomes a data project because I have to have a single customer view. If I am with a bank, I want to make sure that the people in treasury understands my transactions in loans or my transactions as a retail banking customer. And we all have experiences where sometimes some organizations doesn't even know us. I mean, you get calls on your credit card not knowing that you have this money in the bank. So again, that is still part of, because I want to make sure that I'm able to understand my customer better so that I can start personalizing the service so that I can now predict. So imagine a personalized service for a telco company where your plans is just really automatically adjusted based on your consumption. I don't use text and calls right now. I usually most data, but I still pay for my text and calls that I don't actually use. I mean, how can I personalize a transaction by making sure that we just convert what you're paying us to all 100% data because you're not using your calls and your phones and your texts anymore. So that's what I meant about driving customer delight. Now, if I go back, that how portion is, it now goes back to how can AI predict my transactions, seeing that I'm mostly using data, or how can machine learning predict my transactions because I'm using data. So short answer to the question really is define the business outcomes. And normally a data project is the one that drives those outcomes. I'm not saying 100% for all organizations, but most pivots or most successful transformational projects, I'm seeing it as mostly data initiatives.
So thank you. And a follow-up question to that was, how much is the investment one should make in technology to, how much should they allocate as a percentage of the revenues? Something like what you did with the case that we discussed, and related to that also, in this fast pace of innovation, how do you make sure that everyone's able to cope with that, given that not everyone has access to technology?
The investment actually, I mean, obviously right now, most organizations are very conscious about making large technology investments. I mean, everybody's trying to understand how do we become more cost efficient given the state of the business. In most of my customer conversations, it's really more of a conversion because again, I talk about cloud services. Cloud services is actually an OpEx model, meaning you don't buy machines, you don't hire a lot of people. This is really pretty much of an operating expense cost. So really from a TCO, total cost of ownership conversation, it's really much converting what is your current capital expenditure, CapEx model, and it's converting it to an OpEx model. So it becomes really more or less apples to apples. It's also on a pay-as-you-go model, so which means that if you don't use it, you don't pay for it. So it's not like it's a big machine sitting somewhere that already paid for, that I have to wait for depreciation. This one is really more like, if I don't use it, then I don't pay for it. Then of course, obviously you get the best. It's future proof, meaning what you're paying for now is always the latest. Now that's just on the overall tech, I would say tech cost. But the other issue really there is what's the cost of fast innovation? Because what it also allows you is to really build faster solutions and faster services to your customers. Now, the comparison there, if you think about a digital native, let's say it's a fintech. If you think about a fintech and how a bank operates, a digital native normally would only have not more than
Sure.
30 or 40 people. But at the end of the day, they're delivering services that a universal bank would probably be delivering. The same thing with an online store. How many people would an online store normally? But again, it's the same. I mean, it's not as going to be as big as a retail company, primarily because the digital natives are more attuned to using this technology. That's why we're seeing visions like I'm an application development company that happens to be a bank, or I'm an application development company that happens to be a store, because we're pivoting to most organizations are now pivoting to that digital native mindset rather than a large enterprise mindset.
Great. Thank you. I hope we were able to answer the question of one of our members of the audience. I'd like to move over to Mylene. And so, Mylene, the question I have for you is, you mentioned that there are these developing countries where kids want to learn STEM and technology, but they have no opportunity. And then there's also cases where, like in Japan, where they have access to technology, but the kids are not interested. So how would you encourage those kids to be interested in STEM, and how would you provide more opportunities to those kids that have no opportunities but are interested to, focus on STEM and technology? Um, and I guess as a follow-on question is, how would you upskill these people? Um, because labor upskilling is really important now, right? We spoke about Ferdy and Noel talked about hiring all these technologists. Um, but everyone seems to be hiring the same people. So how do we uh, um, educate and scale to be able to meet these needs? Um, Over to you, my.
Yes, thank you so much for that question, Carol. Right, first of all, the first question was really how we are able to roll out to this kind of a new normal with regards to education. The first thing we did was to provide free teacher training for the whole year of 2020. We dedicated our time in providing free webinars for teachers, particularly for the public school teachers, who I believe one of our participants questioned about their skills. Let us not actually they are actually very adapt to the norms. It's just that making them more confident. So we provided that, as well as free training for the students as well, for the learners. For the parents out there, I'm sure your kids are all running around in the house after their online classes. We are providing, for example, Microsoft. I'm sorry to say, I have to promote Microsoft, Ferdy, excuse me. Microsoft, yes, Microsoft Minecraft Education, which is teaching coding for young children, age 4 and above. And this is a way for us to reach out for these learners who would like to be involved in STEM at a very young age. So these are the interventions that we're doing to fill in the gap. Now, moving towards the workforce, as I mentioned that, okay, we're in the era of big data, and all these data, who then will be in the back end? We are really supporting the education sector on pivoting and making our education more relevant, so that when our graduates go to the industry, then you do not have to retrain them or upskill them. So this is really an advocacy that we have. And as well as we're working with actually some companies, for example, like Job Heroes, where they're really looking into promoting STEM in schools so that we can now be their feeder for education, and then they can move into the IT industry. So that, I believe, is an infrastructure. We need the support of government. We're working very closely with the Department of Education, the Department of Science and Technology, the Science Education Institute. We're working also with the private sector with regards to what are the kinds of graduates we need, what are the workforce that will be relevant for you when we have all these students go to join you. And then, of course, the third are the parents, the educators, and the students, the community that we have built. So we have a Philippine Robotic Society that helps our learners, educators, and our school administrators understand the relevance of these kinds of programs so that we can be relevant for the 21st century and the future of our workforce.
That's great, Mylene. So, but do you think we're moving fast enough, given you know the dire need for these people? Is the government giving enough funding and support? Are there projects with the private sector to do this? Because it has really become evident for me, I'm sure for many people here as well during this crisis, that technology is the single most important thing in our lives today. It has enabled us to, survive. I mean, whether business wise, it's just staying in touch with people, buying groceries. I mean, so we should really make this the most important thing. So we're getting enough support to make sure that this helps us. It's going to help open up our economy, right? Um, what are your thoughts? How can we fast track this?
Well, yes, I wish that government would really provide the funding, but as we know, most of the funding is going towards the COVID-related situation that we are in. So what we're doing right now is we're really providing on the private sector the support, like free webinars for the students and for the teachers. And as with regards to the rolling out of digital products, this is where we probably have to ask some of the maybe private sectors listening to us, especially for the last mile schools. The good thing about going digital is that we can reach the far corners of the Philippines, even go global and connect everyone, and this the virtually. However, of course, there are costs involved, and some of the students, in fact, this afternoon we'll have a webinar for some of the students who will have to go down from the mountain, go towards to the city, and just to get internet. So we hope to work with some of our companies listening today that we do need to reach out to more children who are disadvantaged because of their location.
Yes, absolutely. So please reach out to Mylene so we can help build the Philippine technology, ecosystem. Thank you. And I want to go now over to Noel, who has the most questions on the chat. So Noel, my question for you again, you did a survey, and there's a huge opportunity. 80% of our audience are interested to start this AI and RPA journey. Where do you start? I mean, what process? If you have so many processes, um, you know, how much is the investment? There are questions here on adoption. What's the adoption investment? How many percent of your revenue should you invest? Um, and I also learned in the past that you can't just automate a process which is broken. Like, what's the point of just automating everything? You need to
Yeah.
really re-engineer, and then going back to what Ferdy said, you need to now look at the why versus the how. So you kind of have to start again before you even automate and use AI and you know robotics. So what is your uh, what is your advice to the 80% here who want to embark on this journey? How would they start?
That's a that's a whole interesting series of questions that you threw to me, Carol. But I guess it boils down to this, though. When we talk with clients or potential clients, we tell them choose your most painful process. Um, Tell us what your most painful process is, and we can do a proof of concept for you. Our pitch is we'll do this proof of concept. If after we present it to you and you see it works, you say you want to buy it, then that's great. We'll sell it to you. But if you say, well, it looks like it works, but I still don't want to buy it, that's fine too. Our mission right now is really to evangelize our clients to say that you can do a lot better. So that's the first. Maybe that's the answer to your question about where do you start. Choose the most painful process. The second is that you're right about you can't roboticize a process that doesn't work. And I did mention that we work with my engagement team. My teams are uh, multidisciplinary. We specialize in finance and accounting processes, which are some of the most painful processes now. And we embed in a small team a CPA who would know what the best process for this is. We would embed a process specialist um, who would understand, who would be lean certified, who would know processes. Actually, in our case, most of my process people are my process certified people are also CPAs. No? So they would specialize really on finance and accounting processes. Then the other part of the team is the guy who builds who will build the RPA or program the bot for you. So that's how we look at it from a holistic point of view. No? Um, how much does it cost? Well, if you were to make the calculation between how much time your people are spending on a process when they could be, reassigned somewhere else, where you don't have to hire additional headcount, or well, where you can do away with with some headcount, then that would just be a very rough rule of thumb about how much you'll be saving. So how much does it cost? I can't answer that right now until we look at specific cases. But we've proven that it does immediately go to the bottom line. There's a positive impact on your P&L. No? So those are just some of the things you should think about when going through thinking about RPA, which is just the first step in artificial intelligence. Does it apply only to finance and accounting? No, it applies to a broad set of applications. We've done it in tax. We're starting to do it for some clients in terms of HR, and also in inventory management. Something that we're now actually doing is incorporating optical character recognition in the existing RPA process, so that, for example, for our accounts payable book, where we owe our people, where we have to reimburse our people their expenses, all the employee can do, if he has an expense to be reimbursed, is take a photo of his receipt and submit it. And a lot of these receipts are handwritten, and the optical character recognition program will be able to decipher, able to decipher it and put it into the system. So a lot of exciting things where you can branch off to, but it certainly starts with looking into your process and looking into and implementing how and seeing how RPA can be incorporated in that.
Great, thanks, Sua. And as a follow-up question, you also talked about building this culture of automation, and you talked about how machines and people should work together. But it's very natural that people will feel threatened that automation, will take their jobs. So there's kind of some form of resistance. Somebody from the audience asked a question related to this, around seeing a lot of opportunities for RPA because there are volumes of repetitive work in companies. How do you handle the resistance of automation by companies themselves in the Philippines? The worry that they have about job loss, worry about correctness of automation while performing the work, including completeness of data and a raft of reasons that they come up with. So how do you build this culture, right? sometimes they say that technology is the easy part. Change the technology, it's easy to buy the technology, but it's much harder to embrace the change. And the most large transformations actually fail because not because of the technology, but because people fail to embrace that. So how do you build that culture?
Well, like anything that's cultural, it has to start at the top. And the leadership has to understand what they're getting into. They have to understand what the implications are and design a number of things around that. Primary one would be communication. So what we did, for example, in KPMG, um, 5 years ago, I set up what we call the Digital Strategy Committee. Um, and it started out as a very informal study group about, hey, anyone who's interested about how to digitalize, a number of the things we do. Let's talk about it. And it started out as a kapihan where you had geeks and techno geeks who were just coming on board, and this kind of snowballed into, there was no governance structure, and we had a lot of it was just a lot of brainstorming and just trading ideas about, hey, we could do this or why do we do that, no? And then it started becoming more, the committee started becoming more process oriented. We started prioritizing we started giving criteria as to what we're really looking for. Savings for one, ease of making things simpler. So that essentially morphed into a more formal group where we said, okay, we'll do, if all the good ideas presented, we'll do this. And robotic process automation was it. There were hits and misses. We tried a number of things first, which didn't work, but when we saw the results from RPA, it just snowballed. No, so apprehensions about losing your job. There are just, I find that there are a lot of, instead of hiring, our attitude was, look, instead of hiring, why don't we redeploy our people in finance and accounting? And the unexpected result of RPA was that uh, unbelievable. But one thing we found out was that people got more motivated when their jobs, number one, were made easier by RPA, because they could, number one, either, it just assisted them. They weren't removed from that job. It assisted them, made their work a lot easier. Or number two, when they felt that, hey, I don't actually, given that the machine is doing this, I don't need to be here. There are other opportunities within the firm. I could do, for example, I could transfer from finance and accounting to uh, the audit practice or the tax practice or the advisory practice where my basic skills are required. And it's actually helped us manage our churn and the need to hire more people. We find out that we have more leeway in hiring internally. I hope that answers the question.
It's great. Thanks, Noel. And now I'd like to go to Dr. Jose, our robotic surgeon. Um, so my question for Dr. Jose, I have a question, but there's lots of questions also on the Q&A, would be around how the education of doctors would change because of all this advances in technology and robotics. And then there are follow-on questions here around the cost. You know, somebody said, I see the advantages of robotic surgery in terms of patient outcomes. How does the cost of robotic surgery compare with conventional surgery? And is this usable to increase scale and affordable surgeries on common problems? So the second question is around cost. And then somebody asked about whether this would improve the rural health in the country. So it's around national health, as well as you know why do health insurance seem to prohibit this? So lots of questions. Over to you, doctor.
Okay. So let's start first with the training of doctors, right? Okay. Like I do open surgery, I do laparoscopy using stick instruments. And then after I trained robotic surgery in the US. I had to fly several times in 1 year to train with the best doctors there and then to bring the technology back here in the Philippines and teach doctors. You know, it's not only studying the procedure or the surgery itself, because we have two kinds of training, not only the surgery itself, but also how to manage the robot, right? So by constant usage, like we do it by tandems, we do it by teams to improve our skills for the surgical skill and also for the robotic skill. So now there are a lot of instances that you don't need to be a laparoscopic surgeon to be a robotic surgeon. Actually, especially in neurology, majority starts from open surgery and they do robotic surgery now. So, you know, it's we've been doing this for 10 years now and we're actually evolving. So, of course, we have two kinds of training for the robot and also for our surgical skills. Now, with regards to cost, if you compare this from the open surgery, of course, this is more expensive. It's actually times three. Why? You're actually not paying for anything else, but it's really the innovation. You're paying for the machine, right? And also its instruments. But I noticed in time, like in 10 years' time, because like in St. Luke's, we've been using the robot for 10 years now. And now because of the number of cases that we've done more than 1,000 cases, then the robotic fee is actually reduced. I think eventually the price will go down depending on the volume of patients that will be having this kind of operation. Now, in terms of, you were asking me, Carol, about the rural health, right? So I think for now, only a few patients can afford this. Of course, it's the upper class. But then eventually, once we are able to bring down the price, depending on the volume of cases that we do, then it will be more affordable because I think the patient should not think of this as an expensive kind of surgery, but you have to see what is the advantage. Imagine instead of trying to recover for 2 to 3 months, right? And you're just going to go home the following day. And you know, usually my problem with my patients is that I need to remind them, hey, remember I did a big surgery inside. So I need you to take it easy. I always need to remind them that because you know they're up and about right away. They don't take painkillers and they're so happy because they're back in their normal activities. Even with the elderly patients, when I ask them about pain medications, they say, I did not take the pain medications because I don't need it. So, you know, you can see already that there is already improvement in the quality of life. And of course, we cannot measure the quality of life and compare it to the cost in terms of is it expensive or not. But to be able to offer this to patients with difficulty to operate, like for instance, those who are obese, the elderly, those who have a lot of adhesions and big surgeries, big cases that you can offer minimally invasive surgery now, I think we are in a good start now because we just we are not in the starting phase right now. It's been 10 years and our numbers are actually growing. And it's not only in St. Luke's that we do robotic surgery. There are other hospitals now in the Philippines that bought robotics machine so that they can offer it already with patients.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. Very, very interesting. So, people in the audience might want to, try robotic surgery since it's less invasive and it has a higher success rate. So, I'm gonna go back to Ferdy again and ask him. Somebody posted a question here around the revolution of big data, AI, and robotics for business requires ubiquitous technology like a basic standard of affordable internet. What is your view? What, in your view, is the minimum requirement in the Philippines in order for the country to take advantage of these opportunities? How can we achieve this with only two operational telcos at the moment? And as a follow on question to that, um, is around how technology can curb corruption. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? You know, and the third question is around can you give examples? I think you talked about this already you responded to the chat, but it's around use cases. You know, of removing, like automating paper and automatic workflows, remove human intervention, using machine learning and predictive analytics.
Yep.
Thanks.
So on the first question related to, adoption, robotics or machine learning or AI, and aligning it with the internet connectivity. The reality on the ground really is that we still have a good number of our population who doesn't have internet access. And I think to Mylene's point is that actually education is one of the ones that's actually driving also adoption of connectivity. Third telco is upcoming this year, and I hope that actually improves our connectivity nationwide. What we're also seeing is how the learning curve by which people starts using these digital services is also shorter. I remember a time when I'm having customer conversations, and the biggest challenge is that they believe that their customers are not going to be using it. Lo and behold, given this current pandemic, that is the fastest, that there's no other choice. That's the most convenient choice, the healthiest choice, because there's no face-to-face conversation. And people are now really looking for front lines that are of digital services. Classic example is what we call contact center AI. You would like to have, most companies right now already have employed chatbot services, but the other one really is more like there is a big demand for people to be working from home. So how do you manage call center and support and logistics on those kinds of areas? So contact center AI allows you to still call the regular frontline number or help desk number and be connected to an AI to actually address the first lines of calls, which is normally balance inquiry or account inquiries, etc. A lot of people are using that, and some companies in the Philippines have employed that. And I don't think people are even aware that there's already an AI who's actually even engaging or interacting with them. On the second question with regards to the use of AI or corruption, or I think I kind of answered that with regards to automating some of this repetitive tasks. For me, when I was with Microsoft before, handling public sector, and this is a regular conversation with government, you really would like to have a process by which you try to eliminate paper. Obviously, from a policy point of view, it's going to be impossible because our government policies requires paper, physical evidences, etc. But there are ways right now, and there are also policies right now, working on transforming these paper policies to digital documents. And I think just taking out this whole human intervention can really support that. The other one is analytics. If you already are aware in terms of what the collection will be on a regular basis, and you're seeing spikes or dips in terms of collection, then that is already at least some insight for you. And sad to say, normally this becomes a post-analysis, not a predictive analysis. I think those are the only two questions I picked up. I hope I answered all.
Yeah, no, those are very, very, very good examples. Thanks very much. Mylene, you're the ambassador to 72 countries, right? Maybe you can share with us some of the things we can learn from what other countries are doing, so we can scale this educational aspect, fast track, STEM in our country. Are there one or two things that you've picked up from what the other countries are doing that we can hopefully embrace in the Philippines?
Well, I have actually been coordinating with the Department of Education, and hopefully by the next school year, where we can already apply the hybrid instruction, and we're actually preparing the schools to do that. In most countries, they already have face-to-face with safety protocols, and I'm really hoping that the Philippines will follow. Basically, we are following the hybrid instruction modality of most of the countries. So like countries, for example, like Denmark have already had face-to-face, even at the onset of, at the height of the COVID situation, because they have a lot of outdoor space. That's actually one of the predicaments of DepEd, because most of our schools are really enclosed, and because of the density population of our schools, but particularly in the big cities, that may not be too possible for um, for that situation. And what we're actually doing, it's the reverse, Carol. Countries are looking into the Philippines, and actually just did a video for the national organizers of the World Robot Olympiad to help them transition to the virtual robotics, because there's no physical setup, there's no safety protocols to follow, no RT-PCR, no swab test, and so it is really a way for them to really embrace the new technology, because you can construct robots using the virtual sphere by doing simulation in 3D. And I think that's the part where a lot of countries are having a difficulty with, because they do not see the robots as a robot. And here, for the parents in viewing us right now, I believe, the millennials and the Gen Z, they take up technology, right? If you do Minecraft, for example, Minecraft education, which we are doing, it really picks up, and we are actually engaging these students to international competitions. And I'm proud to say that the Philippines just won a gold, silver, and bronze in the recently concluded World
Wow.
Robot Olympiad, virtual, hosted by Canada last November. So the, our students are brilliant. Our parents are more brilliant in
That's
getting them
great.
engaged in this.
Thanks, Mylene. So there's hope for us.
Of
Uh,
course.
we don't have we don't have much time, but I have one question more for Noel and another one for Dr. Sen. And somebody in the audience posed a question for Noel. Where do RPA bots sit after they are identified, built, and deployed on the ERP or in another system that ports the result to the ERP? It's a more
Um,
technical question.
yeah, well, in our case, it sits outside of the ERP. So that's the question I can provide to you. No, it sits outside of the ERP, but it does have access to the ERPs. And actually, this makes it one advantage of a bot is that um, we had one client that was transitioning. It was a conglomerate. They had each subsidiary had their own ERP, and they said, look, at the parent level, we have such a difficult time getting all the information. We're thinking of transitioning to one entire ERP for the entire conglomerate. I said, have you considered if it's a bot, all you have to do is give it access, and if it's for say report management, um, your bot sits out of all these ERPs, but has access to each ERP. So you don't actually have to change to one unified ERP just immediately. You just need a bot, give it access to all these ERPs, and it gathers the information. I hope I was able
That's
to,
great.
and it's a lot cheaper. Obviously, it's a cost. It goes to costs and expenses, but it doesn't go to capex.
Thanks, Noel. And the last question goes to Dr. Sen. Other than for gynecological surgeries, are there other fields of medicine and surgery that now use robotics, like dentistry, etc.?
Right. Actually, like what I've mentioned earlier, in urology, for prostate cancer, it became a gold standard. Okay. So we also have a general surgery like thyroid removal. You know that it's being removed through the armpits. You don't see the scars anymore. Okay. And then in St. Luke's, you also do like lobectomies. So it's not only gynecology, we have urology, in different kinds of general surgery. So yes, and even for ENT, for the tonsils, it's being done as well.
Well, thank you very much to all our panelists, to Jennifer, to Mylene, and to Noel, and of course our keynote speaker, Ferdy. It was an amazing learning this morning. I hope I was able to ask all the questions of our audience. And I just think that for me, as I said earlier, technology has been the most important thing in our lives in the last year, and it's definitely advanced digital transformation in our organizations. But my key takeaway from Ferdy was like focus on the why, and then figure out the how. That's really really important. And of course, from the well, we need to, if you want to start a small scale RPA or an AI project, is to find your biggest pain point. Find your biggest pain point, and KPMG is willing to do a case study around that, right, Noel?
Yes, that's right.
And then, of course, very, very important are the skills. So we need to help Mylene, and we need to fast track the skills development, because this is the single most important thing in our lives, and we don't have enough skills. How are we going to scale this? I mean, we need to really fast track the digital transformation of organizations and our country in order to take full advantage of what the cloud has to offer, what the cloud, AI, ML, robotics have to offer. And of course, finally, you saw a live example of robotics, use of robotics in medicine. So it's quite incredible. So thank you very much, you know, to all our panelists and our keynote speaker, as well as our guests today. I hope we were able to address all your questions. Over to you, Peter.
Helps if I unmute, doesn't it? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, and do your video, Peter.
Yes.
Okay, thanks all for joining us. I hope you found this as fascinating as I did. We're certainly moving into a new world, and I'd like to thank the speakers and panelists for excellent presentations, very informative, and Carol, of course, for a wonderful job, as she always does, in moderating. You know, it was in 1698, it's about 330 odd years ago, that the steam engine was invented. That was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. In 1830, the train was invented, then the car in 1886, and the plane in 1903. In 1947, the transistor emerged, and that was the beginning of the next revolution. We have humans started about 200,000 or 300,000 years ago and could run. They tamed the horse about 5,500 years ago, and they could move a bit quicker running on that horse. And then the train, and then the car getting quicker and quicker, and then the plane. And now we're on a rocket ship. We are now in a virtual digital world that started last year. And this rocket is taking off at a speed that we can probably not comprehend. So the changes that people have talked about today are just beginning of where we're heading. And it's going to be a fascinating journey as we move into the future. Says here you can't see me. I don't know.
It's okay, Peter. We posted your photo instead.
Okay. This reimagination series, this is the fourth, has been a fascinating journey. We've gone through a number of very interesting facets of what's happening to us in the world and in the Philippines. And I'd like to thank those who've helped us in the Wallace Business Forum, Carol particularly, and John Clements, who've been our partner for several years now. And then the Filipina CEO Circle, MAP, and Finex, all active partners with us, helping us to make this a really excellent series. And we have a fifth one coming up on March 10 on banking services moving into the digital economy. It's going to be moderated by former Undersecretary Romney Bernardo. And as all of us have to deal with money and how to handle our money, I was going to say cash, but cash is disappearing. In the very few years, we won't have cash anymore. It won't exist. Banknotes will be a thing of history, as will checks. It will all be digital. It'll all be online, everything we do in regard to banking and financial services. So it should be a very important one for all of us because it will include all of us. So do join us on March 10. I'd like to thank our staff in both the Wallace Business Forum and John Clements for, as always, an excellent job, and Rosario particularly in pulling this all together. She has really done a great job here. So thanks again, and do give us feedback on this event by just scanning the QR code on the screen for feedback survey. Look forward to seeing you on March 10. Thanks for joining us today.